You know that feeling? When the world feels like uh, a chaotic mess and you're just trying to like not get swept away. Everyone's always talking about self-improvement and all, but it's like, where's the instruction manual, you know, for inner peace?
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. It's a common feeling. It's like we're searching for an anchor in this storm. But what if there were these books, like treasure maps, guiding us to that inner sanctuary?
Okay, I like that. Treasure map, sign me up.
Oh.
So what treasure map are we breaking out today?
Today we're cracking open Above Life's Turmoil by James Allen.
Above life's turmoil.
Oh.
All right, so we're diving into some seriously potent wisdom here.
Yeah.
And we've got excerpts, so no need to like clear our schedules for a month-long retreat or anything.
Exactly. We're diving right in.
Perfect. So for someone like me, someone who wants to find that inner peace, but also, still enjoys a good roller coaster ride every now and then. What's the golden nugget in this above life's turmoil?
Well, Allen doesn't beat around the bush. He comes right out and says it. True happiness, the kind that lasts, it's not about what's happening around you, it's about what's going on inside.
It's an inside job then.
It is. He flips the script on our usual, chase for external validation.
Okay, I like that. But how do we actually do that? It's easy to say like don't sweat the small stuff.
Hmm.
But life throws some pretty big curveballs sometimes.
Absolutely. And Allen gets that. He acknowledges that our knee-jerk reaction is to, point fingers, blame our circumstances, blame other people, you name it. But here's the challenge. What if we saw those curveballs not as roadblocks, but as opportunities?
Opportunities. Okay, now you're talking.
Opportunities for growth, for building resilience.
So we're not aiming for like emotionless robot status here, right?
No, not at all.
It's more about choosing how we respond to the world around us.
Exactly. It's about that inner shift. He uses this incredibly vivid image, actually, of a ripe, juicy fruit.
Okay.
That's what a happy soul looks like, he says. It radiates positivity outward, regardless of whether it's, sunny or stormy outside.
A soul radiating sunshine on a rainy day. I love that. But this journey inward, this cultivation of inner peace, Allen also throws around this intriguing phrase, the immortal man.
Ah, yes.
And before anyone pictures vampires and eternal life, I'm guessing there's a deeper meaning here.
Oh, absolutely. We're not talking about dodging death. We're talking about reaching a state of consciousness that isn't constantly thrown off balance by every fleeting desire or passing event. Imagine a stillness within, a center that holds firm, even in the middle of chaos.
Well, okay. A center that holds firm.
Hmm.
Okay, that's a powerful image. So we're talking about tapping into a part of ourselves that's not bound by like our physical bodies
Yeah.
or the ticking clock. Less about living forever, more about cultivating an unshakable core within.
Exactly. He actually compares it to being stuck on a parade float. You're caught up in the excitement, the chaos, just being pulled along for the ride.
Been there.
Right, that's your mortal self.
Yeah.
But your immortal self, that's like standing still, observing the whole parade go by with a sense of detachment, a quiet understanding.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get this. But does that mean we're supposed to like suppress all our desires? Become like passive observers in life? Just kind of float above it all? Because honestly, that sounds a little boring.
That's where Allen makes a really crucial distinction. He's not advocating for passivity, but rather for choosing the source of our actions. He talks about this process of overcoming the self.
Overcoming the self.
And he gets pretty specific. He lists 10 negative qualities that hold us back. Lust, hatred, greed, self-indulgence, you name it, he's going there. These are like weeds choking the garden of our minds.
So we're weeding out the negativity, clearing out the clutter. But what about like the good stuff? Don't we need positive qualities too?
That's what's so interesting. He contrasts those 10 negative qualities with 10 divine ones. Purity, patience, humility, self-sacrifice, and so on. He's not talking about crushing our spirit, but rather purifying it. It's about making sure our actions come from a place of wisdom and understanding, not just, blind reaction.
So it's like we're upgrading our operating system,
Mhm.
not just deleting all the files.
Precisely. And with that upgraded system, we're better equipped to handle those inevitable temptations that life throws our way. Because, trust me, they'll still show up.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
But we'll be ready for them.
Okay, temptations, we've all been there.
Yeah.
It's like they have a radar for when we're trying to like eat healthy or stick to a budget.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does Alan see these temptations? Are they just traps to like lead us astray?
Here's where Allen's perspective takes this fascinating turn. He doesn't see temptation as the enemy, but as a teacher, and a pretty persistent one at that. He maps out 3 stages of soul growth.
3 stages.
And
Right.
this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, 3 stages of soul growth. I'm all ears. What's stage 1?
Picture this. Stage 1 is like that hangry feeling, except it's not just about food. It's that primal part of us, driven by instinct, reacting to everything with a me-first mentality. We're talking
Yeah.
pure, unfiltered desires calling the shots.
Ouch. Been there. Still working on that. Okay, so we conquer those primal urges. Then what?
Then comes stage 2, the big should I stay or should I go dilemma. We get a glimpse of that higher path, that inner peace we're cultivating. But those old habits, they don't disappear overnight. This is where temptation becomes that friend who keeps offering you pizza when you're trying to eat a salad.
Ugh, yeah.
You know better, but the struggle is real.
Pizza salad dilemma.
Yeah.
Now that's a struggle I can relate to. So how do we get to that point where we're choosing the salad, metaphorically speaking? What's the magic formula for stage 3?
Stage 3. This is where Alan drops a serious wisdom bomb. He calls it above temptation through knowledge. See, we often think temptation comes from outside, those delicious cookies, that flashy ad, that tempting offer. But Alan flips the script. He says the real source is our own inward desire.
Hold on. So it's not the cookie's fault I ate it. It's
Yeah.
it's my desire for the cookie that's kind of a game changer.
Right, it's like realizing the monster under the bed is just a pile of laundry.
Oh,
It purifies a desire, that inner craving,
Yeah.
and the external thing loses its power over you.
Okay, I need a minute to wrap my head around that one. That's deep. But while I'm pondering that, what about those situations where it feels like doing the right thing could cost us everything? Does Alan address that?
He does, and he doesn't sugarcoat it.
And
He
I-
talks about this in a section on integrity, where he paints this vivid picture of a man facing a moral crossroads. He has the opportunity to get ahead, but it means compromising his values. He's stuck between doing what's right, even if it means facing hardship, or taking the easy road and potentially losing himself.
Ooh, talk about a rock at a hard place. So what does Alan say? Does he believe in that instant karma thing, where good deeds equal good fortune?
Not exactly. He's talking about a bigger picture here, a cosmic balance. He says the person who chooses integrity, who does the right thing even when it's hard, they might stumble. They might even face setbacks. But they can't ultimately fail because they're aligned with something bigger than themselves. It's not about getting a pat on the back. It's about living in accordance with your deepest values, with truth itself.
So integrity is its own reward, even if it doesn't always feel like it in the moment. I like that.
Exactly. And this is where something Alan calls discrimination comes into play.
Discrimination. Whoa, careful with that word. We've come a long way from the 1900s, right? I'm assuming he's not talking about what we usually think of today.
You're right. Different time, different context. Alan's using discrimination in its original sense, the ability to distinguish, to discern between what's true and what's just shiny on the surface. He says it's like a mental muscle we need to exercise if we want to make clear, wise choices.
Okay, so we're not talking about judging others here. It's more about thinking for ourselves, questioning what we see and hear.
Exactly, and not just questioning other people's opinions, but getting curious about our own biases too. Alan paints this image of a blind man trying to navigate a new city without discrimination, without that ability to see clearly. We're stumbling around, bumping into things, never really understanding where we are or where we're going.
Okay, I get it. Without discrimination, we're walking around blindfolded. So how do we start to develop this mental muscle? Give me the workout routine for a strong mind.
It starts with asking why, Alan says. Not just accepting things at face value, but digging deeper. Why do I believe this? Is it based on solid ground, or am I just holding on to what I've always been told? It's about becoming a conscious participant in our own belief systems.
So it's about self-awareness, really.
Yeah.
Really taking ownership of our spiritual journey, not just outsourcing it. I like that.
And that leads directly to another crucial point Ellen makes. What you truly believe shows up in your life. Not just the things you say you believe, but the deep down driving forces behind your actions.
Okay, I've heard that before. The whole your beliefs shape your reality thing. But what does that even mean in practice?
It's about recognizing the difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge. You can have two people who grew up with the same beliefs, the same religion, but their lives look totally different because what they truly believe in their hearts is playing out in their choices and actions.
It's like that saying, your actions speak so loudly, I can hardly hear what you're saying.
Exactly. And those actions, Alan says, are simply the outward manifestation of our thoughts. It's like a seed growing silently beneath the surface before it bears fruit. Our actions are the fruit, but the seed was planted long ago in the garden of our minds.
So we can't just blame our circumstances. We have to take responsibility for the thoughts we're planting, whether consciously or unconsciously, because those thoughts are what eventually bloom into our reality.
Right. And as daunting as that might seem at first, it's also incredibly empowering. Because if our thoughts are shaping our experiences, that means we have the power to change those experiences by changing our thoughts.
Okay, that's a lot to process.
Yeah.
But I'm picking up what you're putting down. It's like that saying, change your thoughts to change your life.
Exactly. Alan drives this home in his section on mental attitude. Your thoughts are like the compass guiding your ship, he says. Change the compass and you change your destination.
Okay, but this is deeper than just like positive thinking, right?
Right. It's about recognizing that we are not just leaves blowing in the wind. We have the power to choose our thoughts, and those choices have ripple effects. Even when life feels random, we're not powerless. We are constantly sowing and reaping both in the physical world and the inner world of our thoughts and beliefs.
Okay, I remember this part. It's like you can't plant apple seeds and expect oranges, right?
Precisely, you reap what you sow. And Alan reminds us that this principle doesn't just apply to us as individuals, but to the entire universe. He talks about this concept of the reign of law, which sounds intense.
Reign of law. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What's the deal with this cosmic law?
Well, it suggests that the universe isn't random chaos. There's order, even in the midst of what looks like chance.
So it's less about a god who plays favorites and more about a universe governed by, well, laws.
Yes, and within those laws, there's a deeper justice at work.
Okay, I can get behind that. But what about those times when life feels wildly unfair, when terrible things happen to good people and the bad guys seem to get away with it? How does that fit into this cosmic courtroom? So when it feels like the scales of justice are way off balance, what's Alan's take? Is it all just random chance, or is there something else going on?
Well, Alan, he says it's all about perspective. He has this whole section called Supreme Justice, and he makes this really interesting point. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with completely different interpretations. Someone who's driven by ego, who's always looking out for number one. They might see injustice everywhere they turn.
It's like looking through a lens that's tinted with negativity. Everything looks a little bit darker.
Exactly. But someone who's done the inner work, who's learned to see through the lens of understanding, they might perceive a higher form of justice at play, even in the midst of what looks like chaos.
So it's not about denying that bad things happen. It's about choosing how we interpret those events.
Precisely. And it's about taking responsibility for our own role in our experiences. It's easy to fall into the victim mentality, but Alan challenges us to ask ourselves, what part did I play in creating this situation?
Okay, that's a tough question to ask ourselves, but probably a necessary one. It's about owning our power, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But speaking of challenging ideas, Alan also talks about using reason on the path to truth, which I'll admit sometimes feels a little contradictory to the whole spiritual seeking thing.
Right. There's this common misconception that reason and faith are at odds with each other. But Alan argues they're actually two sides of the same coin. He sees reason as this essential tool for discerning truth from mere opinion.
So it's not about blindly accepting what we're told, even if it's coming from a spiritual teacher or a sacred text. It's about engaging with those teachings critically, using our minds to really understand them.
Exactly. And that takes us to what might be the most practical section in the entire book, self-discipline.
Ah, yes, self-discipline.
Yeah.
The not so secret ingredient for, well, pretty much every aspect of personal growth.
Right. And Alan doesn't sugarcoat it. He says that without self-discipline, we're basically just passengers on the runaway train of our impulses.
Yeah. Okay, that's a terrifying but accurate visual.
Yeah.
We've all been there. That moment when you know you should make the healthy choice, but the siren song of sugar is calling your name.
And Alan's point is that self-discipline is what allows us to hit the brakes on that runaway train. And he breaks it down into these 3 stages, which is really helpful, I think. The first stage is control, where we're basically learning to rein in those impulses, to say not today, to that instant gratification.
It's like putting a leash on that inner wild child.
Right, exactly. Then comes the second stage, purification. This is where we're not just restraining those negative tendencies. We're actively removing them from our minds, like weeding a garden.
So it's not enough to just keep those negative thoughts locked in a closet. We have to actually deal with them, root them out.
Exactly. And the more we do that inner work, the more we experience that third stage of self-discipline, relinquishment. And this is where it gets really interesting because Alan is saying that eventually those negative thoughts and habits, they lose their power over us. They don't even tempt us in the same way anymore.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but also incredibly hard to imagine when you're still stuck in the must resist the cookie stage.
Right. It's a process, not a
Yeah.
magic trick. But Alan assures us it's possible. He lays out these 5 steps to overcoming what he calls passion, which he uses as this umbrella term for any negative habit or desire that's holding us back.
5 steps, I'm listening.
It starts with repression, that initial just say no phase. Then comes endurance, writing out the cravings and urges without giving in. From there, we move into elimination, where we're actively replacing those bad habits with better ones. And then this is where it gets really cool. We move into understanding.
Understand. So it's not enough to just change our behavior. We have to get to the root of why we were doing those things in the first place.
Exactly, because when we understand the why, the how takes care of itself, and finally we reach the 5th stage, victory.
Victory. So we're talking about a complete transformation here,
Yeah.
not just white knuckling our way to good behavior.
Precisely. And Alan warns us that a lot of people they get stuck because they want to jump straight to the victory part without putting in the work of those earlier stages. It's like
Oh.
it's like trying to run a marathon without ever going for a jog.
Okay, that's a recipe for disaster, both physically and spiritually.
Yeah.
So we've got our trading plan. Now what's the finish line look like? How does Alan describe that state of being we're working towards?
He calls it contentment in activity, and he really emphasizes that this isn't about becoming passive or settling for mediocrity.
Because it's easy to misinterpret contentment as this sort of apathy, right?
Yeah.
Just accepting things the way they are, even if they're not great.
Right, but Alan is talking about finding joy in the process itself, in aligning ourselves with a higher purpose, and trusting that the results will follow. He says there are 3 things we should be content with. What happens to us, good or bad, our possessions or lack thereof, and our pure thoughts.
Okay, those all sound pretty attainable.
Yeah.
Which I like, but I'm guessing there are also things we shouldn't be content with.
Absolutely. He says we should never be content with our opinions, our character, or our spiritual state. Those are all works in progress, always evolving, always open to refinement.
So contentment, but not complacency. I like that.
And that brings us to what I think is the most beautiful part of the entire book, this vision he paints of the Temple of Brotherhood.
Ooh, the Temple of Brotherhood. Now that sounds intriguing.
And again, he's not talking about some physical building or organization. He's talking about an inner transformation that happens one heart at a time. He says true brotherhood, true unity, it can't be forced. It
Yeah.
can only be built through individual self-mastery.
Because you can't force people to connect on a heart level, right?
Mm.
It has to come from a place of genuine understanding and compassion.
Exactly. And Alan says there are 4 inner enemies that stand in the way of that connection: pride, self-love, and he distinguishes this from healthy self-compassion, hatred, and condemnation.
Those are some heavy hitters. So how do we dismantle those roadblocks? What's the antidote to those negative forces?
He says we have to cultivate their opposites: humility, self-surrender, love, and compassion.
So less about judging and separating,
Yeah.
more about understanding and connecting, which I think is a really beautiful way to sum up this whole journey we've been on with Above Life's Turmoil.
Beautifully said. And Alan leaves us with this really powerful call to action. He challenges us to stop fighting those external battles, the ones we wage against circumstances, against other people,
Mhm.
and turn our attention inward, conquer the enemy within, he says, and you conquer the world.
Because that's how we find true happiness, lasting peace, and ultimately how we build a better world, one heart, one mind, one choice at a time.
Precisely. It's not an easy path, but it's the path path to lasting fulfillment.
Well, on that note, I think we've all earned a moment of quiet contemplation and maybe a piece of fruit. Remember that juicy, radiant fruit. This has been an incredible deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Above Life's Turmoil. Until next time, keep seeking that wisdom within.